Welcome once again to Life That Matters. My name is Dr. Sharon Norris Elliott, and I am excited, as always, to have you with me as we talk to different people. You know, sometimes on my show, I interview people whose lives matter for the kingdom. Sometimes we talk about the Word of God and how that and do a Bible study or Bible study series and how that feeds into our lives because our lives matter for the kingdom. And so today I have the singular privilege and honor of interviewing one of my writing buddies. We are part of an organization that's how we met. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But I want to introduce you to my friend Chris Manion. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Sharon. Good to be with you.
And I want to introduce you to my audience. And the neat part about this audience for Life That Matters is people are watching not only in America, but from all over the world, which is like super cool. And so
Very
um,
cool.
I welcome you, Chris. Again, I welcome my audience. If this is your first time watching, you might want to have your Bible handy. We may refer to some scriptures that you might want to look up. You don't have to do that. You can just sit back and enjoy this talk that I'm going to have with Chris. So, Chris, I would like you to just begin by introducing yourself. Who is Chris Manion?
Well, I'm a person who grew up in a family of six with beautiful, loving parents, very smart parents, and um, just did everything. Four brothers and a sister that families do. I grew up with great skills in education and got through college in 3 years with,
Wow.
magna cum laude, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't want to be an academic. I really wanted to put into practice what I was trying to learn and figure out what was I supposed to do in life
Mm-hmm.
besides be a mommy and raise babies. So I did fall in love in college and to a wonderful man, my husband Joe. We've been married 45 years, almost 46,
Oh,
and have
wow.
two children, Brian and Tess, five grandchildren, and some of them always say to just keep praying for future babies. So, and our children roll their eyes at that.
Of course.
My I've been a business executive. I wrote agree in the direct selling industry. I was a national director there. I had a team of between 5 and 10,000 people that I started from scratch,
Mm,
and that's part of why I'm a speaker as well as a writer like you. Um, and through that, I did most of my nonfiction writing.
mm-hmm,
And in the middle of that career, which was pulling me towards all the things that the world says, I was having some very deep spiritual experiences. God was calling me deeper and deeper. I went into 6, 7 years of Bible study, and
mm-hmm.
I'm a born and raised Catholic, so we were at church every Sunday. But
Okay.
Bible study is not necessarily the strongest part of the Catholic faith. At least when I was growing up, it's gotten much
Uh-huh.
better. So I did lots of Bible study, and so I'm having these diametrically opposite experiences of secular um, success and then
Yeah.
deep spiritual experiences, and that's what eventually started me to write my memoir. And then from there, the children's books. I've been a catechist for over 20 years. I got a degree, an award from the Archdiocese in Chicago for being, a good little teacher and with all the children. I love children, and I love
Okay.
boiling the Word of God down. Like the study of homiletics, where you take it down to like 10 words. D's and
Yes.
ands also count as part of those 10. So if you can get a good homily down to a child's level of maybe, 5, 6, 7 years old,
Mm-hmm.
then every adult will get that message and your heart gets it too.
All right. Well, you write children's books as I do. I didn't start out as a children's author either. So we have we have that in common as well. We met through an organization called ASA, Advanced Writers and Speakers Association, and it is basically a fellowship organization of women authors and speakers. And so I met Chris that way, and um, through just through our talking, or what have you, we did discover that we both write Christian children's books, and um, I have I have in my hot little hand, right, a copy of The Light We Cannot See, which came out in 2021. And so we want to start by talking about that book because it is quite unique. You have a unique approach to writing a book for an adult audience about grief. And so I didn't even read the description in Amazon on Amazon. I just knew, oh, I'm going to I'm going to have Chris on my show. That's going to be fun. So let's talk about her book. And I was just moving, and I ordered the book and was going to get back to the whole description and everything. And when I did, I didn't realize that it was a book that dealt with grief. So, can you talk about what inspired you to write The Light We Cannot See?
Mhm.
And what kind of work went into crafting this story?
I didn't know I was writing a book about grief. The the stories just come to me, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. Uh, and I know that the way writers work, God puts all kinds of things into our unconscious. But there was a very conscious thing that happened a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, and our daughter let us know she had two little boys, and let me know she was expecting a third child. She goes, but
Mm-hmm.
don't tell anybody because it's very early. And so we were going to head towards her home. She lives about 5 hours away, and she wanted to tell her daddy in person. And so when
Okay.
we arrived, I gave her a big hug, and she had said she was going to go to get a sonogram that morning to show
Mm-hmm.
us the picture of this grandchild. And so I
Mm-hmm.
whispered in her ear, how did things go? And she shook her head.
Mm.
And I pulled back and looked at her face, and it wasn't a good face.
Mm-hmm.
And so the grandchildren pulled me away. And the next time I looked up, her daddy and she were hugging in the kitchen, and she was crying against his shoulder. And so the sonogram didn't happen. The baby was no longer alive within her. And so instead of celebrating, we were beginning to mourn with her that day.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to visit our son, which was the main purpose of our visit. He actually delivered a separate message to us that night after his dinner and said, please don't tell anybody, it's early yet, but we're expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And so in one 24-hour period, we were asked to keep secret the fact that one baby had died and one baby was living in our daughter and daughter-in-law, and they both
Mm-hmm.
apparently had conceived at the same time. And so this this is we lay in bed that night holding hands, trying to figure out what do we do with this. And God
Right.
is the giver of life, and He calls life back to Himself at all times. So she asked me to come back to her house. But she says it's just too strange to know this baby in me is not alive anymore. Would you just please be with me? So we got chocolates and movies, and we sat and waited until the
Mm-hmm.
baby left her. And
Mm.
that is a very challenging time, but it's also
Yes.
a time of life. It's the full circle of life, and we don't know why things happen like this. God is a good and gracious God, but
Mm-hmm.
I've never asked why. I
Right.
trust Him. I know that He has bigger plans than my mind can possibly conceive, and if it's important for me to know, He'll let me know. So
Absolutely.
that
So this book, The Light We Cannot See, um, it is so it's so neat that um, the store, I'm going to read the first page to you.
Okay.
There once was a store in the center of town that looked dark and closed when the lights were turned down. Not everything is as it first may appear. God's lights all around us. We've nothing to fear. The angels who guarded the doors through the night prevented the grown ups from seeing the light of children whose spirits were led to the store to play with the toys and the dolls they adore. So I love the rest of the book. I mean, you see the angels getting the toys all ready for the children.
Hmm. The 2 months later, after this event with my daughter, she conceived again, and so we had this knowledge that there was one child was in heaven, and another had come to earth, and so that, I think, kind of was the birthing of this story in my imagination. I know God had everything to do with it, because the
Hmm.
rhyme came out. I'm not sure about your book, but a rhyming book. Did you write a rhyming book? Yours
Yes,
did,
all
didn't
of
it?
my books
Yeah,
are in verse.
yeah. So it's not easy to write in rhyme, and this came out really without any editing. And I'm an editor, and I love to edit, and it just, I really feel it was this gift. And so this toy store thing, I was like asking God, so why a toy store? And my grandchildren all said when they read the book, oh, those angels must really love those children. Look how many toys they took out. So for the primary audience of children, they understand that toys are joy, and
Hmm.
heaven is joy and glorious happiness. And so the part that surprised me was the adults who received joy from this story, and these
Hmm.
bereaved parents who I understood why they were drawn to the book, but the fact that they felt joy out of it was a delight for me, and a
Yeah,
quite a surprise. And I think it's the same thing. They know how much children love toy stores and toys, and so
exactly.
it's God's way of saying everything is happiness with these
Hmm.
children in heaven. There's I want you to be happy. I want you to know they're happy. And that toy store image, I think, is why he gave it to me. I think it works
Yes.
for both the adults and the kids.
It does. It's interesting that my second book in my series is about death. My series is theology for little kids, and basically, here's an understanding of these different issues, right, or these different things that we do in church. Um, Here's an understanding of them, and so I'm approaching the subject from a different vantage point of a little child who faces the death of a grandparent. And what is that? What is this? Right? What is it? And the child has been taught that heaven's a great place, and so when told that Papa is not coming home, right, that he's in heaven, the kids are like, well, we want to go there too, not quite yet, right?
Yeah.
so, so an understanding. You consider yourself a Christian leader, right? One who leads others toward truth. Um, in grief, it's not about saying the right words, is it?
No, um, it's a tricky subject. I've been in bereavement for over 20 years,
So, how do we
and
avoid, Chris, saying the wrong thing? We want to say something because we want to be helpful or we want to do something if someone has lost a little one. Um, what should we
well,
do?
it's sometimes you don't need to say anything. First of
Okay.
all, words are what we want to use, but there are moments where words really they're not going to change anything. They're not
Mm-hmm.
effective. What is effective is a look of sympathy, a look of love, a touch, a hug, just sitting in a rocking chair with, together. People
Okay.
like my husband and I, when we've been together for a long time, you don't need to say a lot. Just being
Mm-hmm.
with each other. The things not to say are things like "you'll get over it," or "this is all God's plan,"
Oh,
or "it's for the best,"
none of
or
that. No.
I understand how you feel. Nobody understands how we feel. That you
Exactly.
just can't, that's none of those are really true. But we're trying to say something to try to make a person feel better, and the truth is, you're not going to feel
Mm-hmm.
better. The
Oh,
death of a child will, and I've not lost a child, but I was so afraid of losing them. The death of a child will never leave you. It is always with you.
mm-hmm.
What I've been told. And
Well,
I was so afraid of death of my own children, that I gave them back to the Lord immediately as soon as they were born, because
mm-hmm.
I knew I was so vulnerable to that
Mm-hmm.
fear of that pain if I ever were to lose them. So I gave them right back. I said, I'll take care of them as long as you allow me. And I hope
Mm,
that's a long time, but they're yours. I receive them as a gift, and I hold them as yours and as your gift. They,
mm-hmm.
they're, I can call them mine, but they're really
But they're
yours.
really yours.
Yeah.
That's a great and true perspective. Um, my husband and I married after we had children in other marriages before, and so we had a blended family. And during that first year of our marriage, his youngest daughter passed away, and she was an adult. But the grief, that I watched him go through, um, was I obviously cannot, like you said, I cannot um, understand it. I mean, I understood that he was going through grief, right? And all I could do was just watch and be there, right? If he wanted me to be in the same room at the time or something. So it really doesn't matter whether it's a little child or an adult child.
Right.
Your children are your children,
Yeah.
right?
You
And
can't take their
having
name.
that perspective that they are God's um, is great wisdom. And you were going to say,
You can say their names. Many people try to avoid speaking a child's name, or anyone who has died, because they don't want to bring up the memory. Well, the memory is always there, you know. So,
mm-hmm,
but speaking the child's name is actually good for the bereaved to hear. They want to know
mm,
that their child's memory lives, that their child's life had some meaning, that people do remember their child, and just asking them, tell me about her or him.
mm-hmm,
Say the name, and then just open the conversation and let them speak. Because in the speaking and the telling of that child's story, there's healing and there's memory that's positive, and there's a shared moment there, because grief shared is a good thing. So I would, that would be a couple things that I would say, just in terms of not putting your foot in your mouth. I think that's the one reason that most people don't say anything. They're
mm-hmm,
afraid to say the wrong thing, or they've heard other people say things that are not
right,
recommended. So then they just clam up. So
mm-hmm,
my other suggestion would be, self-servingly, um, send them this book. It's like a large greeting card. It
mm-hmm,
gives people joy. It gives them something to hold on to. One mom said her son died when he was 6. She goes, now
mm.
and every time she goes to bed, she said, I would wonder what he was doing up in heaven. And she read this book, and she goes, now I know. And so, it just gave her imagination a place to go, and a place to settle with joy and peace.
mm-hmm.
And I think that Jesus was all about that peace. I leave you, my
Oh,
peace I give you. And so I think this story is one of those ways that his peace comes for us.
that's great. Yeah, I love how you say Jesus is all about peace. Yes, he is.
Hmm.
He was all about making peace between us and the Father. That's the whole reason why he came.
Right.
And he is all about leaving, like you said, the word of God says, peace I leave with you. My peace
Mm.
I give to you, not as the world gives, right? Let not your heart be troubled. That is on us to
Yeah.
let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Now, we believe it or not, we are winding down to the end of our first show. Now, I am going to have Chris with me for another show, so be sure you don't miss any moments of the rest of this show, nor the one for next week. However, um, Chris has not only written this book, there is another children's book, and we're going to start talking about that now, and we can continue on the next show. See, that's how we get people to come back, right? Have a
You're
little
very crafty.
have a little cliffhanger. But we have another book coming out, and see, because I am part of the press, right? I got a chance to read it ahead of time. Ha, 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 ha. And I'm so excited about the next book. The next book is called The Grateful Boat. Now, is The Grateful Boat set on a true story?
It is. A number of years ago, Hurricane Michael hit the Florida coast, and it was devastating as a Category 5 hurricane. And I heard a story of a man's boat that did something uh, unique happened to it. And my memory of that story is gone because it immediately started spinning the story that I just wrote called The Grateful Boat. Because it sounded like a perfect children's story. So I
Okay.
know that I could Google it and look up the original one, but all the locals around here, when I mention it, they go, "Oh yeah, I remember something about that."
Hmm.
So there was something that happened with a man's boat, and it turned into this story of how, in a scary, scary situation, this boat found out that he could still serve his master somehow, even though awful kinds of things happened to him during the hurricane.
Right. So during the hurricane, I remember reading the manuscript. The master or the owner of the boat had to leave town because there was a hurricane coming. Um, duh, right? And the poor little boat, had to was just there being slashed about, right, by the wind and the wind and the water. Um, Now, who would you send the Grateful Boat to, and why?
Well, there's I would send it to people who are either going through challenging situations where they do not understand why
Mm,
something is happening. Why
okay.
is this happening to me? Or to people who feel abandoned, where they
Mm,
feel that either God has abandoned them and isn't speaking to them and isn't anywhere to be found, which happens to very holy people. Mother Teresa, at the last 2 years of her life, could not feel God at all.
mm,
Or those who are abandoned by their loved ones. Some family members don't speak to one another for decades.
mm,
Sometimes parents have to abandon their children, and they're taken from the children are taken and placed in foster care because of dangerous situations that might occur. The children don't know exactly what's going on depending on their age. They feel abandoned, that
mm-hmm,
nobody loves them. I had a middle brother. Nobody loves me. My
mm.
parents called him Chief Rain in the Face.
Oh,
So there's all kinds of people where this boat ends up being grateful, but in the middle of it, you're not feeling grateful at all. You're feeling scared. You're feeling like you're having a pity party, or you're just not understanding why.
mm-hmm. And what I love about writing children's books is you really are writing to adults like on the sly.
On the sly. Yep.
because especially I love to read books to my grandchildren, and um, there's all kinds of messages, right? Definitely for them, but I'm picking up on uh, all the different things, like you said, self pity, for example. Oh, I feel so sorry for myself. Well, we can see that in children, right? When maybe they don't get what they want,
Mhm.
and now nobody wants to help me and nobody loves me and they're feeling sorry, and you can read this book, but then you figure out, wait a minute, you know, when I think about the job promotion I wanted, I didn't get it. I sound a lot like little Bobby, right?
Mhm.
So when we do this, when we read to our kids, when we write children's books, right? Those same feelings that adults have over adult issues,
Mhm.
kids have over
Right.
kids' issues. And the neat thing about writing children's books is that we can help children begin to even be able to handle those different kinds of issues early on. So as the issues get bigger, their answers are still the same, right? And as
Absolutely.
Christian writers, of course, the bottom line answer is God is always going to be there for us. But so, like I said, there's a lot more to be said about the Grateful Boat, The Light We Cannot See, and another book that Chris wrote that is for us adults. All right. And so we're going to take all of that up in our next show. So this has been Life That Matters. Again, I am Dr. Sharon Norris Elliott, and you have been listening to part one of an interview and watching part one of an interview with author Chris Manion. So please be with me again